So we have Mahshid and Hesam, co-founders of Tali.ai, which is the leading Canadian AI scribe for healthcare. Good to chat with you guys. Let's start with a quick intro. If you guys want to share history of Tali and maybe a history of yourself, how you guys ended up there.
Mahshid Yasai, co-founder and CEO of Tali. I'm a computer scientist by training, studied at McGill, then moved to Toronto for my first job at BlackBerry. After 3-4 years in tech, Hesam and I started our first company, which was also a software company in healthcare. We worked with large organizations like Camich and Unity Health to smaller organizations, built lots of solutions in this space, and everything we learned from healthcare is through that business. And Tali is really started in 2020 after we learned about the documentation and admin problem in healthcare as being one of the biggest challenges in healthcare. And that's when we were confident we wanted to focus on this problem to solve.
Hesam Dalafarin, I am CTPO of Tali.ai. I always make this joke with Mahshid that I am missing a few other letters because I do many stuff at Tali. So intro is good with Mahshid. At Tali, I am leading the product and tech team. So super happy to be here.
Awesome. So let's talk about Tali, the trajectory where we are now.
We're deployed across the country, expanding into the US as well. A few thousand providers are actively using Tali every day. I think we calculated recently, just in the first 5-6 months of 2025, we have saved an equivalent of 50 years of a full-time family doctor's time in documentation and admin work, which is really nice because if you think about all the patients in Ontario or in Canada that are not attached, they don't have access to their family docs. Those of us that we do have access, we struggle to get an appointment. So with all of that, it's the impact is real. The growth of the company is very strong as well. And we're really in day zero of this solution category. There's so many opportunities to build on the intersection of AI and healthcare that we're very excited for.
So day zero also feels like a contradiction because feels like, at least in the voice space that we are talking about, seems like everyone was missing it naturally. I mean, we started, I guess, with Siri and then Alexa. So it was like, it's not even only in this space. Like generally, voice was just absent from UI, right? So now we're catching up on the consumer side. And then now we're really, like I was just telling you guys, came back from HLTH. It was interesting that voice is what's introducing or reminding people that, oh, your B2B or your enterprise software experience could be actually more human, could be intuitive. And now people are looking at the rest of their EHR or the rest of their practice software. It's like, oh, could the rest of it actually be as nice? I think you guys are looking at the same thing as, well, you're onboarding organically so many onto Tali. And how do you think about what to build next?
It's actually a very good observation. We also started with the similar concept of Siri or Alexa. And at the time, our product has this voice command that the clinician could automate a few things on the software. But that wasn't enough. When ChatGPT came in, and then we could actually summarize a long conversation to a structured note, it was the time that we picked up. So technology was okay, but the workflow, we couldn't prove enough value at the time for the clinicians to purchase the product. But
so unstructured to structured was the gap?
Unstructured to structured was the gap, yeah. They would like voice command on the EMR and some automations, but the fact that you can actually summarize a very big context of a conversation to a summary, that brought a lot of value for the clinicians. But as Mahshid said, this is just the beginning. As you can imagine, the same thing happened on other platforms as well. There are many things that you can automate with the voice as well.
Mm-hmm. Mahshid, anything to add?
No, I just wanted to add that day zero usually refers to the future, not the past. There's so much in front of us that in retrospective, you might think this was really day zero of everything that
feels like it.
Yeah.
I mean, really, I feel that the feeling, for example, at the conference was like, okay, I guess we have to rebuild all of SaaS now because things are not out of balance. Like one part of my day feels really interesting, really intuitive, and the rest of my day is a drag. So let's rebuild the rest. So I'm going to share something. I had a really cool conversation with an ex-DeepMind guy. at the conference, and we came up with this heuristic around how to build when we were incorporating LLMs. And then specifically, we can talk about the voice side. Top right, we are saying new technology on the right, legacy technology on the left. If you're building a top right, it's R&D heavy, it's more flexible, can handle ambiguity. And on the left, it's rigid. The kind of shorthand was Go versus chess. Like we're looking at tree structures and logic-based decision-making versus our LLM and AI-driven solutions. And the discussion was, okay, we have these general models from the right, and we are basically looking at this frontier of obsoletion for the old tech as these solutions on the right become cost-effective and accurate enough to give you the output that you need. So, and when you can't do that, you trudge back to a human or to an older kind of legacy system. And these are flexible. These can go between verticals, between industries. And on the left, we have actually the least flexible. We have these maybe even like tree-based decision-making systems where I build it for one practice, for one type of practice. And these are not portable. The problem is if you build this, you can't deploy it into another vertical as much. And then the biggest conversation was, okay, if you're building from the left to the right, you can't create a business, but you should have an exit in mind, like 2 to 5 years, because chances are the technologies from the right side will get cheap enough to run a general model that will basically, this is going to happen over time. Like we're just going to get down to here. So it was a cool discussion. And then the way we grounded it into this specific kind of the voice side was you could be building an agent that gets to this point too expensive to go down to the exact outcome. The examples of that, I don't know if you guys have seen Sierra. You probably have seen Attuned Intelligence and Elise AI that are in healthcare. Attuned Intelligence basically says, hey, we will pick up the phone line for the entire hospital system, but at some point we just send it to the right department. And over time, we will be able to now do your practice-specific whatever workflow is needed. And I think Elisa has the same thing. Break it down, break it up between non-clinical and clinical workflows. So the non-clinical is almost scheduling and kind of those kind of calendar management type of tasks. And then practice-specific ones, I think they're training specific models. So the question was, I mean, one reflection is on this, like how much sense does this make to you guys, having been in the inside of the implementation? But then the question is, where are we in this spectrum? And then I think the question we're asking, for example, at Future Sight is if we see that this is a go-to-market engine for prop tech, health tech, dentistry, etc., how would you think about building a core engine that will serve different industries? What is the point of specialization and general use case?
I can go first and then I pass it to Mahshid. So I guess that's a very good observation. The immediate reaction to that graph is that if you are doing on the right side, if you are building a product on the right side, then the more you focus on the product side of the platform or your company, the more successful you will become. That means that how much effort do you put in the traditional UI UX? How much effort do you put into integrations? Now the AI part of your application become less important because you are.
So you are continuously keeping yourself in best place to benefit from the advancement in technology that becomes commercialized.
Absolutely. And we actually experienced this firsthand. Like we invested a lot of time to improve a couple of our voice to text model, but the advancement outside of like by tech giants was so much better that at some point we decided that we are not going to invest anymore into those.
What was the time frame? Like when were you guys working on it, and then when did it just pass by?
It was 24.
Okay.
Yeah, and by early
And can you
25,
describe, like, there's also that point of diminishing returns where you decide, you know what, we don't need to improve this right now because the tech will come. What was the doctor experience that you guys were trying to improve, and like what was the gap that got closed? Was it accuracy of the text?
It's always accuracy, and for the clinicians, because like in Canada and the US, they talk with different accents, medical terms and drug names is the one that all of the commercial models fail. So we invest a lot of time to collect data. We hired medical students for data annotation. We gathered all of those data. So we started fine tuning and training our own model. And we got to very good results, but at some point we decided that the technology is going to catch up, and then they are going to also enable you to fine tune your large LLM. For example, if you are using GPT-5, you can actually fine tune it in your context as well. So
Right.
it was that breaking point that we said that, okay, let's just assume that the
So where do you
concept.
see, like, if you look at the next 6 months, what are the things that you expect to come your way just by the underlying models improving that are very relevant to your product or your roadmap?
I think multimodal LLMs would get better. For example, if at this time, if you want to fill out a PDF form, which could be an insurance form or a disability form, with the LLMs that we have now, it's not a trivial task. But if they get better at document processing and filling out those forms, then we will reach a point that you don't need to build a stack around it. Just the LLM would do the job very well.
So you see, so then based on this, if we say, where does Tali sit? Your philosophy is we still are a really good interface, really practice-specific product. That's the layer we keep building and maintaining, and then we let the technology continue to lift the quality of the product, right?
One area that we think we should invest is the area that AI learns from your practice. So every single clinicians have different documentation style. We're giving them many tools, for example.
Like we say, even at the clinician level, or is it at the clinic level?
At clinician level, at clinic level. When the clinic gets larger and larger, they probably prefer to enforce a single template. So they standardize their documentation. But if they are smaller, they are like individuals who have different preferences. But then with a single like interface, you are not able to tell, for example, GPT-5 to customize your workflow towards this doctor behavior. So you need to build things around your main model to be able to adapt to the clinician workflow. And this applies to like voice to text, to summarization, to all other day-to-day tasks that do.
And you would say right now, is this feasible? Is this affordable right now to create that level of individualization on the models or not?
People has started to modify the prompts. So you have one standard prompts, and then you would monitor that single user. And if you realize that this single user has different preferences based on the edits that they are doing, then you have a chance to copy that standard prompt and apply a modified prompt to that single user.
So, okay, so prompt. Is it at the prompt level, or is it you're saying there is, so GPT-5 gets its own instructions, let's say, per user in that sense, right?
But you would store those instructions in your backend, like GPT doesn't store that.
Okay. So now, zooming back out to that question of, assuming that based on what we see, voice agents are useful in many verticals. Let's say that like GPT-5 right now is at a place that you're saying, even for your medical kind of drug names and practices and like prescriptions, it's already like catching up quite well to that. So that gives us a sense that in many industries, that should be the case, right? Like it's not an exception. Like let's assume if we go into construction, prop tech, financial advisory, we should be now at a pretty decent level. So if that's the assumption, we are saying if we wanted to start a foundry, like we say, hey, let's build one so that then we launch multiple companies out of. Each company needs to be really good at the user interface and industry fit kind of go to market. And then the core engine, for the most part, is not that specific. But what I wanted to understand is a comment you guys made earlier when we were talking before this, that the quality going from the 80% to 100%, that's where there's a lot of technical lift. What does that look like?
So I can tell you, for example, for voice to text, even like GPT-5 or even the Whisper model, which is like by OpenAI, there is around like 20% gap in terms of word error rate between what you get out of internet and what you can achieve by fine-tuning your model. So still you need to collect some data from your users, still you need to fine-tune the model, but can they catch up with your field? Maybe, but I don't know. Like it's like a combination of how large the model can get or how many tokens they will see and how fast they can respond.
So maybe let's ask that same question a different way. If you were to start Tali today, what does that tech stack look like? Say, okay, Whisper is at the base, and then the customer data seems to be what you need actually to be able to close the gap, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So if we were to even, for example, say, hey, we want to accelerate this by acquiring a team with a voice agent, domain-specific data is the most important part rather than what they have running just as a voice agent. Or is one of the main assets.
It's one of the main assets.
Because without the domain-specific data, you can't close the gap any other way, right? Like you have to have the data and then get into the work of customizing.
But I don't know how much do I value that assets today versus like next year. I don't know.
Right.
Yeah, maybe they.
I guess it's a question of
yeah.
What's your go-to-market? Like if you are ready to run into a market and you want to have that advantage, then you have to value it as you're contributing to your user experience, which turns into, I guess, high reviews and good experience that lets you go fast in that market. Yeah, that's one of the things actually I feel like as we are talking, like especially in the venture studio setup, I'm thinking as we look at different businesses, what we find interesting to actually maybe launch a business are businesses that are 1 year go-to markets are validated. Like the tech is almost not as key, and we are focusing on SMB, not enterprise. So, like in that context, mostly what we are looking to validate is can we go to market fast enough because our tech horizon is so short that I need to be able to sell into this market before that tech advantage is gone, and then hopefully by then I have some amount of revenue, some number of users, and then we will improvise then based on what's available. But that's kind of where my mental model is these days around. Like if you are looking at launching, how far can you get in the first 12 months with where the technology is kind of now? And beyond 12 months, it seems too opaque tech-wise.
Mahshid, what do you think?
I can tell you how it has been for us so far. I'm not that good in expecting the future, but for our user profile, even 2-3% difference in quality of the product, core product like software, engineering, and the model makes a big difference. Our users are very busy, very high cognitive load, almost zero tolerance for any inefficiencies in models. Like if we generate a note and they would have to make edits into the note, that's still more like you're still saving 5 minutes, but no, that going back and making the edit is frustrating to them.
I feel like that's exactly the point. Like, what is the point of ambiguity or the double work? Like, as soon as it's beyond a very small percentage point, I think, I have to double check everything now. If I have to double check 2%, I don't know. Do I need to double check everything?
Reliability exactly is key, and I think that's where the engineering will have a handshake with the models, and no matter how smart they are, etc., you will need to do this engineering embedded into how the model is delivered, because accuracy is one thing, perception of accuracy is another thing we're seeing. Is that how is the product built around the model that you have, and the way the product is built, that engineering and product thing is where your deep expertise in understanding your customer, understanding your user base becomes a differentiator.
We experienced a similar thing with medical imaging retrieval, where if for any reason some of the images don't show up, I'm like, my staff needs to check everything again.
Yeah.
And then we looked at the data, and actually it was a minority for sure of it. But yeah, I think probably self-driving is a good, we have arrived at that point that, anytime I'm walking in San Francisco, if it's a Waymo, I have peace of mind crossing the street at like midnight because now we have an intuitive sense of like the error rates.
Mm-hmm.
And like we've crossed that point. So I think that's a good level. And we're talking about the emotion, we're talking about the human experience, we're talking about also what is that thing like in any relationship, one bad impression takes 10 positive actions to kind of erode. So it's that experience of
And
the product.
sometimes it's not even your product, it's the environment that the product is being used at. Like a lot of the clinics have very jittery access to internet. So let's say you have a live stream of audio to text to your server, and their internet gets disconnected for 5-6 seconds and reconnects back. Part of the note is lost, the note's generated, and the doctor is like, Tali missed this part of the conversation. But so it's now your job, because with that
Yeah.
perception of quality versus the actual quality, is to take care of whenever their internet is disconnected. Are you supporting that reality of the environments? And there are millions of examples of like this where the excellence in product and engineering becomes such a massive complement to the model that it will be undeniable.
Yeah. Again, I think the consumer experience there is Google Meet versus Zoom. Like anytime I know my internet is not good, it has to be Zoom because it just does that much better job in encoding, and like the lag time is much better always than Google. Interesting. I like so two things for me. Like one is this what's in our control, the domain specific data and customization for your use case. And then the second piece, I feel like if it wasn't clinics and if it was, let's say, design studios, reliably probably much better internet because it's just like a different customer base. So I think there's a lot of things that they're native to whoever your customer base is. And managing those becomes your responsibility because you made a promise. Who cares where along the way the ball was dropped? You made the promise of accuracy.
And sometimes reliability is a little bit harder to have, for example, very, very high SLA when you have a large LLM in your backend server. Because like those guys, like if you just borrow one server from Google or Amazon, it's probably 99.9999. But with LLM, they go down. Like there are multiple instances like per year, OpenAI, Google, Amazon goes down. But user expectation hasn't changed. Like I am expecting this software to actually work, and you cannot make it as an excuse. Okay, the LLM is not working, so I couldn't deliver the service.
I think the interesting thing is in this case, the fallback is so far back. Like the fallback is like, wait a minute, it's like, feels like 10 years ago that I have to now do manual notes and drop down menus. The fallback is like exponentially worse.
Yeah.
So almost I have no other way. So okay. I mean, this is really good overview for me in terms of understanding how to model around one central kind of tech lift versus the edges of improving it and going into different verticals.
And I think you made a comment earlier about this, is that depending on how much capital you have access to, you can then start broadening this use case. Am I focused on oncology, or am I focused on surgical oncology, or am I focused on pediatric surgical oncology? And depending on how much capital you have, you can afford to be that specialty experience in product and engineering and everything in only one of them. So in our space, you might see companies that are just going, every clinician under the earth can use my product, from marketing and sales and GTM all the way to the product. And similar to the classic days of, I think, software, is you can afford to be really good at just one use case, and that's how you compete against those general models that are going to the left side in your graph, but also capital heavy companies.
So I guess what I didn't have in my graph and comes in, one was the cost, like affordable. Like, can I afford it? Like as it becomes cheap enough, it can keep going, or I think it's the other way around. Like it's becoming like feasibility. I guess like these models have become feasible over time and just keep pushing in this direction. And then the second was, you said practice specific accuracy. As it gets better, I can keep going down in this direction. And the third one you're talking about is that quality of experience. And that was that point of triage where these guys were like, yeah, we pick up the hospital phone line. And as soon as something is specific, we just send it to them instead of trying to resolve that case because we're not good enough.
Yeah.
We're not better than the human yet.
And that could be also, like we were seeing it in customer success, making the judgment call of now is the time to move it to human, or now. These are like, that will have a massive impact on the user's perception of the service as a whole.
Yeah. Cool.
Okay.
Customer success is actually a very good example. You could imagine that by this time, Intercom or other CRMs has figured this out. But I was actually analyzing our chat agents for customer success, and they are falling short, very short. Regardless of how much like knowledge you feed into the customer success, they don't make a right decision at this time. So if someone is out there who wants to build a better support agent, still there is, still is time to do it.
It's almost as if there needs to be kind of sentiment analysis halfway through the conversation. There would be like, okay, alarm. I'm not having this conversation well. I need to escalate in human, and that's not happening right now.
I guess because as soon as you start doing that too often, then the cost saving is not there, right?
Sure.
Sierra is interesting in this, like the way they are building is almost, I mean, they've also raised a ton of capital, and it's like very interesting founders like Salesforce and Google, like main players. But they are basically running a consulting firm that is, the consulting firm is the research part. So they hire someone to become the customer's representative in the company. And then you work internally with the engineers to build their AI employees, which says this is how early we are, that they're almost going one for one. Per client, they have one human at least. That is. So I feel like right now they're making a McKinsey. They're building like a McKinsey. But the output instead of strategy is your AI agent. And the pricing model for them is per task completed. It's not like they don't sell software. So they're actually like, you get to hire the one. But I think that tracks with what you were saying. Like we are still too early and we need human in the loop almost way more than we think. Nice. Cool. Well, this is fun. Any closing comments? More wisdom to drop?
Winter is coming, take vitamin D. That's my answer.
I think that's for the humans in the loop. Stay healthy. Awesome. Cool. Thanks, guys. This was fun.
Thank you.
Bye.